And using this one tool is key to our existence, to our relationships, to our intimacy. It is also key to our confidence, to our self trust, our sense of selfhood, integrity. The lack of or the breaking of integrity is simple and maybe even preferable to us because we fear the outcome of something. When that breaking of trust happens, how does that feel? Because in a sense, it's a betrayal. It's like saying, oh, I firmly believe this and I'm going to lean into it. These are my values. And you've done really well at creating this amazing life that is perfectly in alignment with that. And you are in integrity until you meet someone who is very different from you. If you're the kind of person that is going to sell that way and say those things and act that way and be that way, don't be the person that then. Welcome to Mindfully Sovereign, the podcast that invites you to reclaim your feminine self-authority and unleash the abundance within. My name is Sapha, I am your host, and I'm here to help guide you past your limiting beliefs and into the heart of your unwavering and undeniable power. This podcast is all about reclaiming your feminine self-authority, learning the art of self-seduction, and awakening your inner goddess so that you can become an aligned match to your most abundant life yet. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and get ready to become mindfully sovereign. Hello, happy Monday, and welcome back, beautiful soul. I am so happy to be sharing a solo episode with you again. It's been a minute. We've been having so much fun with guests, so I don't know, everything evens out. I am super excited to expand into this subject with you because it has to do with taking our mindful sovereignty to the next level. And using this one tool is key to our existence, to our relationships, to our intimacy. It is also key to our confidence, to our self-trust, our sense of selfhood, our ability to center ourselves as the most amazing, valuable, worthwhile, and beautiful human beings in this world. And it is a tool that is very deeply entrenched into the heart and within the heart of the divine feminine in all of her aspects, whether it is the light feminine or the dark feminine. This particular tool is a powerhouse, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. So let's just jump in, shall we? Today, we are going to be talking about integrity. This is one of my favorite subjects, and it is one, again, it is a tool that can just absolutely change our lives. There's also a very sneaky way in which integrity can sometimes be lost in our lives, and in the way in which we accidentally, without thinking about it too much, rob ourselves of this beautiful gift that we have, and that is a tool at our disposal to make our lives better. And you know me, I like to look at definitions for words every now and then just to get a little bit clearer on what they mean and how we can relate to them. So I am going to share two definitions with you that I really love. One of them is that integrity is the quality of being honest, authentic, and having a strong moral principle that you refuse to change. Now, there are things about that I'm going to get into. The verbiage of that isn't my favorite, but that is one of the definitions of integrity. One of the other one that I really like, and this has more to do with a visual example that I want us to really lean into, and it's the visual of the integrity of the structure of something, right? So this definition states the state that integrity is the state of being whole and undivided. And so the visual that I want to bring forth for you with regard to that definition is the vision of the integrity of a house. What is the foundation set upon? Is the structure within integrity? Will it hold? Will it be safe? Will it be able to envelop the inhabitants with love and care? And that is how I want us to think about integrity as that foundational core principle of our lives. Because at the end of the day, we are the ones that are at the helm. As you know, our idea of mindful sovereignty is we are the ones calling the shots. We are the ones that are sitting front row, driving in that driver's seat. And if the foundation to our existence, our thoughts, our values, our heart centered passions, who we are as a creature, as a human being in this beautiful existence that we get to thrive through. If that foundation isn't solid, or if we don't understand it, if we don't know the things, the components that go into it, then the foundation will be compromised and the integrity of the structure will also be compromised. And this is where we get little cracks. This is where we teeter and totter a little bit and where we feel out of balance. So, integrity is a pivotal tool at our disposal to really lean into our personal and mindful sovereignty. Integrity is the ability to stay true to who we are. And as a priestess, I can tell you one of my favorite, most near and dear to my heart tenets is truthfulness. Priestess doesn't lie, and she doesn't lie to herself. And that is important because we sometimes are very adept at putting on a show. We are good at presenting only the best, most curated, most seemingly perfect parts of the self, not just to the world around us, but to ourselves as well. This is where we sometimes don't recognize that we are breaking integrity with our own selves. We're breaking integrity with who we are, with our hearts, with our values, with our belief systems, with the essence of what makes us us. And so integrity is absolutely paramount, and it's very much deeply connected to that sense of truthfulness, which also connects us to deeper intimacy. And it also opens the door to possibilities for more in our lives. Integrity is also very deeply connected to our sense of self-trust. And so I want you to think about it this way. How Yes. How about we look at it from the beginning of the year? How do you feel when you start the new year and you have all of these amazing, exciting ideas, these thoughts that you're going to bring into fruition? You choose a word for the year, you choose your intentions for the year, you set your goals. You know that this is the year you're going to do the thing. This is the year that you're going to learn how to ride bike, how you're going to, I don't know, write a book. You're going to learn how to take pictures or sing or play the violin. This is the year you're going to show up. You're going to go do yoga. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to heal your body by means of learning more about the nutrients that your body is needing and how you can better nourish it. This is the year this is going to happen. And how do you feel when you're a couple of weeks in, or even a couple of months, and sometimes a couple of days into the new year, and that concept, these words, these promises, these goals, these dreams, these beautiful, creative flow forms of expression come into not fruition, but breakdowns? How do you feel when you're not, right? You don't do the thing. You're not about the way. How does that feel in your body? How does it feel in your mind and in your heart and in your soul? And can you recognize that one of the reasons this feels like such a sharp edge is not that you're letting the people around you down. It isn't that you said to your friends that you were going to do this and now you didn't and they're going to call you a loser. It's, although that can play a part of it, but it is deeper than that. It's that you told yourself you were going to show up for yourself and with yourself in a very unique and empowering way. You said, I'm going to be there with you as we create this amazing life together, and it's going to be great and it's going to be fabulous. And then before you knew it, something happened that took you right out of that, and your relationship to self suffers from it. It is the same as if you had been in a relationship either with a friend or a lover, for example, and they said they were going to do something. For example, they said, I will be there at the airport at this time to pick you up when you get back from your trip, and they didn't show up. When that breaking of trust happens, how does that feel? Because in a sense, it's a betrayal. It's a abandonment of selfhood. And what makes that heavier when it comes from the self is that, again, it is a selfhood, right? It's an abandonment of selfhood. You yourself did the not showing up, the abandoning, the breaking of the promise, the breaking of your word. And that is where the crack comes in into the realm of integrity. A person who is very deeply immersed and entrenched and embodied in their integrity knows that their word is their bond. This may mean that that person is a lot more thoughtful in the things that they say, in how they show up. It may mean that they take a lot more conscious, careful, not scary, careful, but deliberate, devoted way at showing up, at speaking, in how they move, how they walk, how they talk, the things that they say they are going to bring into fruition. They're a lot more devoted to them. They pay a lot more care, more attention, more intention to those things because they know that to be in integrity, the thing that has been said, the thing that has been spoken, that has been promised, that has been birthed into connection must come to pass in order for that breaking of trust not to happen. Integrity also, therefore, brings us to this beautiful examination of what it is like to experience and to understand disappointment. And so allow me just a quick little detour. I actually did a whole program just on the story form and the felt reality of disappointment in our lives. I think it was last year, but let me take just a moment to address this piece of the puzzle as it relates to integrity, because I believe it to be pivotal. I believe it to be important, and I believe that it can further help us understand this as we live it. Disappointment is something that we feel like one of the sharpest edges, one of the deepest pains possible in our hearts, in our minds. And so we try to avoid disappointment like the plague. Not only do we try to avoid disappointment from an outside source, inward, but we try to avoid being the person to disappoint someone. And the thing is that we need to become very well versed with the truth that no matter how much we try to control, no matter how much we try to inform or to influence or to keep things perfectly organized within tiny little boxes that we can overlook and keep just so that nothing is out of order in our worlds, no matter how much we try to do any of those things, at one point or another in our lives, we are going to experience disappointment and we are going to disappoint someone else. And the reason that is important is because we tend to assign too much matter to that truth. We tend to believe that if we become the person that disappoints someone, we are evil, we are wrong, we are less than, we are a person that is selfish, or there's so many stories and so many ways in which that this could go. And a lot of them really are individualized to each person, the way that we relate to the world. But we believe that we are just, in essence, a bad person. We've done a bad thing, we've disappointed someone, and now I'm beating myself up because I'm a loser and how dare I, and what the hell is wrong with me? Why didn't I do the thing? And now everybody's mad at me and they see me as this horrible person who, so you see where it starts to spiral. And the other thing is that people are people. They're not perfect. Sometimes, some way, somewhere, somehow, someone is going to say or do something that is going to feel very disappointing about you. And it does not mean necessarily that this person is evil or that they are lacking in morals or that they had malicious intent toward you. Are there going to be some cases in which that unfortunately happens? Yes, the world is varied and there's a myriad of dualities that we can explore there, but in the bigger picture, as we're relating to this, it isn't necessarily tied to any of those things so much as it is that by virtue of living this human existence, we are not any of us going to ever be perfect. And I say all of that to say that integrity does not have to equal or depend upon perfection. That's not what integrity is. Integrity isn't, oh, I said I was going to pick up my socks off of the floor yesterday, and now I didn't, and now I'm a horrible human being, and this means that I am worthless, and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mean that. It means I said I was going to do that. I didn't do it. Okay. I can recognize that. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to lean into my ownership. I'm going to crown myself sovereign of my life, and I'm going to pick up the socks. So it is not about perfection. It is about the ability to show up for the self from a place of self-empowerment, self-devotion, self-love, self-care, self-understanding, and self-centering, as center yourself as the most important, valuable, beautiful being in your life, and understand that that means you get to show up for yourself from a place of radical ownership and radical accountability, and you get to hold yourself up to a certain standard. And that isn't terrifying. That's wonderful. Does it mean that you are always going to be perfect at it and you're never going to disappoint anybody or yourself? Nope. And that's exactly why I brought all of that up, so that we can be clear. It isn't about perfection. And just to circle back to this for a second, and again, and this is a conversation that is broader than just this. That's why I did a whole program around it, is the idea of disappointment. Disappointment isn't going to kill you. It's not going to kill the other person. It's going to shift something. It's going to shift the dynamic within a relationship, whether it's to self or to the people around us. It's going to shift the way in which we perceive something or someone. And a lot of times that's one of the reasons why we are indeed afraid of disappointing someone, because we don't want to be perceived a certain way. We don't want to be perceived wrongly. We want everyone to see us and to perceive us as a wonderful human being. And I understand that. And it's not always going to be the case. Not everyone is going to see us as this amazing human being forever. At some point, somewhere, somehow, we may use the wrong word to describe a feeling. We may forget how to center ourselves into our emotional intelligence. We may cross a boundary, right? Because we set boundaries for ourselves, but sometimes we might actually cross one and forget, or need to be reminded, or learn from it. The point is, at some point, somewhere, somehow, it's going to happen. And that doesn't mean anything horrible about us. It means it's an opportunity for growth, for expansion, for self-authoritative action, for sovereign living. And so we want to look at it in that form. It also, because of that same reason, gives us the opportunity to hold other people accountable and in their ownership, right? Remember, we talked about that accountability where we don't get to do the accountability part for the other person. I'm not going to do the work of your own ownership, your own accountability. I'm going to let you do that. But I'm not going to hold you by the hand and say, everything is going to be okay. You did this, but I will do the hard work of dealing with blah, blah, blah. I'm going to make it so that I'm enabling you. We're not going to do that. This is not the conversation that sovereign people have. This is not how we move in this world. And so we don't do that. We do understand sometimes things happen, and then we get to hold a standard. We get to hold our own power. We get to hold our own values, our own set of power. We get to hold ourselves in our own set of accountability and ownership. And then we get to see the other person do the same. And that's where growth can happen. That's where healing can happen. That's where conversations that help us deepen intimacy can happen. That's where new boundaries can be established. That's where an understanding can shift. That's where we see that, oh, okay, my perception of this changed because there was the disappointment of this. And now I get to build upon that from this new space. And this means it's a new set of expectations. It's a new set of showing up for myself from a new point of view. It's a new way of creating communication, creating intimacy, creating boundaries, creating the dynamic of embodied partnered living that we get to lean into in this life with ourselves and with the people and the world around us. So disappointment isn't going to destroy you, I promise, even though it can feel like that sometimes. You will be fine. Okay, so and getting back to our topic of integrity. So, disappointment isn't going to absolutely destroy you. You don't need to be perfect to hold integrity. You do need to be very keenly self aware. Keenly self aware of what it is that you are opening the door for in your life. Are you opening the door for things that expand you, that fulfill you, that feel properly aligned with your heart, with your mind, with your soul, with your values, with your boundaries, with your sense of self? Are you somewhere, somehow, bending the rules just a little bit? Are you somewhere, somehow saying, okay, yeah, my values are this, but maybe I'll make an exception just this one time because? If you are doing that, wherever you are doing that, that is a break of integrity. Similarly, where are you breaking the trust with the self, and where are you breaking the trust with the people in your life? And where are you bending the truth or avoiding it altogether? These are the places where that integrity will crumble down. These are the places where we will see a lack of integrity. And these are the places where we want to be extra mindful because we want to continue to be in our sovereignty by being creatures of very deep and very practicable integrity. So I'm going to use just a normal example in a story so that we can deepen and sink our teeth further into this topic of integrity. Say that you, as a kid growing up, developed this pattern where wherever you were, you adjusted who you were in terms of what your boundaries were, what your values were, what your views of this world were to fit the group that you were with, because you knew, consciously or not, that this particular group was going to push on those boundaries, those values that they may not necessarily be properly aligned with, but you had a need to remain in that world. And so the peer pressure, as we call it, overtook, and you adapted and you compromised your integrity for the sake of allowing the people, the world, the situation around you and outside of you to be more important than you, than your internal systems, than your belief systems, than who you are at your core. In that sense, really many of us, if not all of us, have experienced a sense of loss of integrity at one point or another in our life, if for no other reason than peer pressure exists. Not all of us know how to lean into it. And it becomes this pattern that we then follow through with for the rest of our lives. So, and also, because it's a very expansive conversation too, because some of us will lean into that realm because we have undergone certain kinds of trauma that our ego interprets. Or our ego is there to help us perceive the world in a way that is meant to be helpful for us. And so in order to do that, the ego likes to tell little stories. And so if when we were little, we reached for the cookie jar and our mom slapped our hands, and that was a little bit of a traumatic moment for us because we weren't expecting it. And maybe she scared us, or it was the first time she slapped our hands, and it was like a shock to the physical body, right? And then the mind will see that, and then the ego will be like, oh my gosh, okay, whenever I reach for whatever it is that I want, the world is going to beat me down, and it's going to be a punishable offense if I ever desire anything. And now I believe that it's important for me not to want for anything. And this is, of course, an extreme example, but just so you understand how the ego works. And so the ego will see that. And so as it relates to integrity, sometimes the ego will show up with a story, a particular narrative about something that happened at one point without us knowing. This is everything happening subconsciously, unconsciously. And so it'll show up and activate something within us. And it'll make it so the lack of or the breaking of integrity is simple and maybe even preferable to us because we fear the outcome of something. For example, say that you were someone who grew up really, truly, firmly believing that dancing was bad or it was just like something that didn't align with you. And you got continuously pressured to do this thing and you kept breaking with integrity because deep down you knew it was bad for you. Your hips hurt, your knees hurt. I don't know. It was a silly example. I'm trying. But you knew deep down that this wasn't a thing that you were in alignment with. It wasn't a thing that you felt comfortable with, that you wanted in your environment. And yet you will break trust with self and you will bend the rules and you will bend over backwards to please everyone else around you in order to keep the status quo or maybe remain invisible or keep feeling like you are not a disappointment to others, etc., etc. And then in so doing, you are breaking trust with self and you are breaking out of integrity. And the more we do this, the more it continues to show up as a pattern deeply ingrained in our brains, in the structures of those beautiful cells and those neural pathways. And the more we keep repeating this over and over in our lives, and before we know it, we find ourselves being in a deep lack of integrity with self. And that can be very depleting. It actually fractures the selfhood. We don't really know who we are when we are not willing and able to speak up for ourselves from a place of true love and understanding and power. We don't know what it is that we are capable of. We can't quite wrap our minds around being embodied as a kind of person if we keep breaking integrity within. And it's oftentimes the smallest things. Again, I'll go back to the example of how we get at the end and also the beginning of the year. We get so exhilarated. We just get the sense of FOMO almost, where everyone else is setting these beautiful intentions and they have these goals for their lives. And oh my gosh, I have to keep up and I have to come up with something. And it's the end of the year. That means that I have to have something to set my sights on. I have to do something. And so that FOMO kicks in and we say we're going to be about and do X, Y, Z. And then before we know it, it starts falling down to pieces. And sometimes it'll break down because we were not truthful with ourselves about what it was that we were setting our sights on, right? I will use one of the most common examples that I find, and I used to find within myself first, but I find with my clients as well. And this is the idea of weight loss. A lot of times the year is ending. Maybe we've eaten a little extra because the holidays and the family. And look, food is a connector. And so when we sit down to share food, we enjoy life just a little bit differently. And sometimes that means that we overindulge. Sometimes we don't actually overindulge, but are eating at a capacity that is better suited to our bodies, and our body starts moving and expanding into a place where it feels more comfortable. And sometimes it's overdoing it, right? One way or the other. But we get to the end of the year and things have changed a little bit, and we say, okay, this is the year I'm going to lose the 10 pounds that I gained from Thanksgiving and Christmas, blah, blah. And we'll frame it, right? This is what's tricky, is because we've learned, generally speaking and broadly speaking, that caring for ourselves is important. And we know somewhere that everybody in everybody is beautiful and worthy. And we know somewhere deep down that we really have a right to exist as we are, and that a size on a clothing item doesn't mean anything about our worth. We know this somewhere in our heads, somewhere in the back of our minds. It just resides there. And we know that even though right now it seems we're actually going back in the opposite direction, which is really very heartbreaking for me. But even though we know that generally people these days are more body positive and we want to love our bodies and we don't want to get fixated and all of these things, we know all these things. But Even though we will then, through the knowing of these things, filter our truth and say that I want to start the new year and be healthy. Is that really what's going on deep down inside? Or are we still reaching for that number on the scale to come down? Are we still reaching for the jeans that I used to wear when I was in high school to fit me? Are we still reaching for those things? Because it's important to understand where the breaking of that integrity might be coming in. I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh my God, every year that you say you're going to go to the gym and be healthy, you don't do it, you're out of integrity, you're a horrible person. Again, it's not about being a horrible person or a good person or a bad person. It's not about being perfect. It's about, where did that breaking of trust come in? Where did the making of the promise come in as well? Like, where was this intentionality? Where was the mindfulness? Where was the personal sovereignty in the creation of this thing that you wanted? And also acknowledging that sometimes, yeah, life is going to happen. And for example, you might have said, I'm going to learn how to horseback ride. And then before you knew it, you got promoted at your job and now you're working more than ever and you're traveling. And so therefore you haven't had a chance to go. Okay, yeah, that happens sometimes too, but that isn't a lack of integrity, right? That's different. And there's nuance in that too. Because in that, even in that reality, there is a choosing that can happen. And you can still say, you know what? Yeah, my plate is full. I've gotten this new opportunity. I'm working more than ever. I'm traveling more than ever. This is great. And I'm actually going to make time, if only once every 3 months, I'm going to go and learn how to horseback ride. It's going to take longer. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a little silly maybe, but I'm going to find somewhere that is going to facilitate that for me. And I'm going to lean into my word. My word is my bond. And I'm going to open up the pathway for myself. And I know that I can make it happen because I am a limitless being. And there is the connection to that integrity. There is the certainty. There is the loving connection to self through truth, through care, through devotion, through trust of and with and through self. So there's that. And then so we want to understand where that breaking is. Do we really want to be healthy? Or do we want to fit into those jeans? And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I want to make this very clear. You know, I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know this. If you have not and you're new, allow me to say the following. I am not a believer that we need to beat ourselves up over anything. I believe that we get to show up for ourselves and with ourselves from a place of strength and power and love and radical ownership, radical accountability, and personal mindful sovereignty. That is why, obviously, the name of the show. But so I believe those things. And so I don't believe that we have to berate ourselves because of something happening or not happening. I do believe it's important for us to learn to have conversations with the self, understand where things are coming from, become present, become aware, have that mindfulness. Be the curious explorer of the self, the one that is willing to say, okay, I can see where I broke with integrity pretty quickly there. Was it that I didn't mean what I said? Was it that it wasn't in alignment with my values? Was it that I lied to myself when I framed this in this way? Was it that I was only reaching or striving for XYZ because I thought that's what I should be doing, because I wanted to please everyone else around me and I wanted to make sure that I didn't disappoint them? What was the reason? Where did that breaking come in? Sometimes we make allowances for things or people or situations, and that quote unquote allowance is what leads us into the breaking with integrity. It's like saying, oh, I firmly believe this and I'm going to lean into it. These are my values. And you've done really well at creating this amazing life that is perfectly in alignment with that. And you are in integrity until you meet someone who is very different from you. And for whatever reason, you put that person up on a pedestal and all of a sudden you can bend the rules. All of a sudden, there is extra room from not flexibility, but for breaking of things. Yeah, I believe this, but you know what? Just this once. And that once turns into twice and 3 times and more and more. And the more you break with trust and with self and with that word that is your bond, not only does it become more easy, but the more pervasive and reoccurring you'll find it in your world. And so, if we don't drop into mindful presence, if we don't drop into the ability to ask the questions who, where, what, where, when, why, right? If we don't do that, we are more likely to keep on breaking that integrity, to keep on pushing those boundaries, to keep on, yeah, but I'm just going to do it this one time. It's not going to be that big of a deal. They'll understand or whatever, right? Breaking integrity is not going to have the outcome that you think it's going to have. And if we are not clear as to where that breaking is happening, then how can we embrace ourselves, and how can we have these conversations with self, and how can we learn from, and how can we grow, and how can we heal, and how can we go beyond? So it's important to know where that's coming from. So again, just to go back to that original example, it's if I say that I'm going to be healthy and this is going to be the year where I'm going to take care of my health and it's going to be amazing, but underneath it all, the truth is I don't give two craps about my health. I really don't. I think I'm healthy. No one's told me otherwise, but I'm going to say that I want to be healthy because what I really want to do is lose a bunch of weight as quickly as I humanly can so that I can look a certain way, so that I can fit a certain mold, so that I can feel comfortable with myself because I haven't quite learned how to love myself at this size. And I'm not planning on doing so because I don't think that this is acceptable. And in fact, I think it's disgusting. And the fact that this has happened means that I am less than, and we spiral. And if that happens, quick, you're going to break that bond that is your word. It's out of integrity, but it's out of integrity because it started from a place of mistrust, from a place of self-judgment, from a place of self-abnegation, self-denial, self-dismissal, self-loathing even sometimes, and it's from a place of not truthfulness. Like, let's make that a new phrase, not truthfulness. So that's where the breaking with integrity comes in. And we want to be people that are very deeply steeped in a sense of integrity. The feminine is very, very deeply steeped in integrity. She walks with integrity because she walks with purpose. She walks with clarity. She walks with truth. She walks with presence. She understands the imperfection of being human and she embraces it and she walks on even when things get challenging, even if there's a personal disappointment, whatever that might be. And then she chooses again and she chooses better. And actually, that reminds me a little bit of that original definition that we were looking at, which had to do with that sense of moral principles that you refuse to change. I take issue with how that is worded, mostly because I believe that life, when it is hyper rigid, can create this ease within the self. I believe that if we are so deeply immobile in the way in which we see things and how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to the world around us, that is more likely to create complete fracture and to break things and shatter them into pieces than if we are willing to remain open, present, solidly in a foundation that feels aligned with us and open to the yes and of it all. Yes, this is my value. This is my system of belief. This is the world that I inhabit. And I understand that as I develop, this might change. And I understand that there are things that I might not be taking into consideration that could be at play here. And I understand that things are never going to be just so, and that I'm not necessarily in control of things. And therefore, I'm allowing myself the room to grow, to breathe, to flow, and to expand and to become more. And the becoming of more is also pivotal and paramount when it comes to our lives feeling not just like a romance for the ages, but like lives that we can sink our teeth into, that we can thrive in, lives that don't feel like we're just surviving one day at a time, lives that create beauty, that are expansive, that get to be fully relished even in the midst of and in the presence of difficulty and pain and discomfort. And that's what we want to think about. And so that is my one thing that I'd say, like, you don't necessarily have to be a person that is hyper rigid in order to be a person of high integrity. That is not the case either. So just like you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be hyper rigid. You get to choose and make choices. You get to observe. You get to make inquiry. You get to say, this is in alignment with me. This is the truth of who I am. This is worth it for me because I trust myself, because I am here showing up for myself at my highest good, for my highest good. And this works. And I'm going to show up as a person of high values. I'm going to realize that I'm not going to open the possibility of the door for settling for less or bending the rules or bending over backwards just because. That is leading from a place of integrity, is understanding the subtleties in this conversation. It's understanding the underlying places where sometimes little breaking can happen, where we might self-sabotage, where we can expand more deeply, where we can become more powerfully aligned in this. Integrity is a conversation of deep intimacy with self and with the world around us. Leading from a place of integrity means holding ourselves to a certain standard. Because that's the thing, is living a life where we are the creatrixes of this amazing, amazing life filled with abundance and love and joy and fulfillment and purpose and the things that we most want, requires for us to show up with a certain level of, with a caliber of power. And that demands a certain level for us to hold ourselves to a certain level and to not just obfuscate or move aside or step aside for something because all of a sudden we're going to lower our standards because XYZ. That lowering your standards is completely out of integrity. Settling for less is out of integrity. So just as saying something and making your word your bond and then breaking it is lack of integrity and breaking with integrity, so too is not showing up for yourself at the level with the capacity that you have to show up for yourself at that level. And settling for less is going to be breaking with and having a lack of integrity. Again, this is not about perfectionism. It's not about rigidity. It's about the understanding of the self, the showing up for the self from a place of empowered action. You get to show up from a place of empowerment because you are powerful. And you get to show up at a certain level and hold yourself up to that standard, even if it hurts sometimes, even if it means you're not going to be the most popular person in the room, even if that means that you realize that the relationships that had served you up until that point are no longer in alignment with you. And now you've got to change the dynamics with those relationships or those situations in your world, in your life, whether it's changing jobs, whether it's realizing you've outgrown something, someone. If that is the truth of where you are and how your world aligns within your values, within your boundaries, within your beautiful range of who you are, then things get to change. And allowing for the change, moving into the change, and really exploring that change, that is integrity. Lack of integrity is remaining stuck somewhere you don't belong because you've chosen not only to settle, but you've chosen to give of your power away, because despite the fact that you know you deserve better, you're going to put up with less for whatever reason. That is a lack, huge lack of integrity. And take it from someone who was very much in that space for a long time in her life. And all it does is leave you depleted, leave you exhausted, and leave you feeling like you don't know who you are. Your life feels stagnant. You feel very much unfulfilled. You can't quite move. It almost feels like you are standing static and the rest of the world is just passing you by. And so integrity has so many different hues, so many different textures, and it gets to be so varied and so beautiful and such an integral part of who we are as powerful human beings who show up for ourselves in this world from a place of knowing our worth and our value and our importance. When we forget that we are valuable, worthy, important human beings, it's so much easier for us to break with integrity. But when we know, even when things are challenging, that showing up from that place of empowerment and from that place of centeredness, everything becomes different. And that integrity is something that we get to be in the practice of forever. And it makes this life so much more beautiful. And it deepens our connections, not only to the people in the world around us, but to self. And it gives us the opportunity to explore life in a way that we never even thought possible. When we are in integrity, we are capable of dreaming big and going after those dreams. And we're less likely to self-sabotage. Integrity is really this beautiful key to the puzzle, right? Like piece of the puzzle, where we really allow ourselves to take a step back and say, man, I deserve this. And I'm going to show up as the person who deserves that. And as that person, I know that that means that I'm going to have to hold myself in deeply radical accountability and ownership. And sometimes I'm not going to like it. Sometimes it's going to stink. And sometimes it's going to make me feel like the odd man out. And sometimes I'm going to feel like I am, in fact, disappointing everyone. And sometimes I'm going to feel so deeply imperfect and I'm going to be tempted to judge myself very harshly. But still, I show up because I'm worth it. Because I know my value. Because I am not going to lower my standards. Because this beautiful experience to show up as myself in this world is so worth it. And therefore, I lean into my integrity. And we want to think about it in different ways and in different aspects of our lives. Sometimes it's just holding ourselves accountable to the fact that, hey, we've been saying we are going to show up to this thing and do this thing for a very long time. But then whenever the time comes around, I'm tired and I make excuses and I self-sabotage and I just don't. And that's breaking integrity. Taking people for granted in your world is completely out of integrity. And I say this because sometimes one of the ways in which we break our word as our bond most often as human beings in this world is that we will tell someone in our lives, whether it's a friend, a family member, a coworker, something, we will say, hey, I'm going to do this with you. I'm going to be there. And then it seems so easy to bail and to take them for granted and to think, oh, well, I mean, I'm not going to do the thing, but they know that I care for them. They know where my heart is. They know that no matter what, I'm going to be their friend and everything. So they know, like, this is going to be okay, right? Me not showing up to this thing, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it is. Of course, there are extraordinary circumstances in which, okay, yes, you can adjust and alter And that actually still is within integrity. But you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the times that you may not be being completely truthful about something, and that you are choosing to obfuscate and bend that truth, and that you are choosing to bypass the truth. That those are the times when you are out of integrity, and you know exactly what I am talking about, because we've all done it. I've done it. But we can do better. In fact, I'll relate this to the episode that I did with my friend Emily, where we were talking about female friendships and how difficult, quote unquote, they seem to us. And I'm not saying that mockingly. I do recognize that it's not something that just comes easily. It is, again, a practice. It takes a lot of vulnerability. It's scary. It's uncomfortable. It's not, it's like this whole thing. I get it. It's worth it though. And keep mindfulness around your relationships. If you take people for granted, you are out of integrity, and that lack of integrity is going to crumble that relationship. Sorry, but it's true. You can't just expect people to be there if you continuously break your word. It doesn't work that way, because you wouldn't want it to work that way for you either. What would happen if you were the one that felt like you were continuously chasing the friends in your life? Like, oh my God, I'm always chasing them. I'm like calling them and texting them, and they never call and they never text back. And then like I invite them to things and they bail last minute. And listen, like I said, you are in integrity if, for example, you had plans to go out Saturday night and you are feeling horrible and you want to honor your own body and your own health and your well-being, and you say, I can't. That's an integrity. However, if you are someone who just, internally, and this is where you have to get super honest with yourselves, because let's face it, just like with the food example and the weight loss example, we will often lie to ourselves. And if you are that person who is just like not feeling it, and you said you were going to do it because you were hyped up and in the moment and you were like, yeah, I want to be there. And then all of a sudden you don't want to be there. Don't be surprised when those people start pulling away from you, when the relationships begins to fracture. Out of integrity is reaching out to someone with ulterior motives. If you are reaching out to someone because you want something from them, that is out of integrity. If you are only showing up when it benefits you, out of integrity, because any relationship needs both parts. And I'm sorry to tell you, but your romantic relationships and your relationships with your children are not the only important relationships in your life. And if you want to have friendships, you need to get very quickly centered in that reality, very quickly. Do not take people for granted. That is out of integrity. Not speaking up when something that is not okay has taken place is out of integrity. In other words, hushing your mouth when there's been something horrible that has happened to someone and you just watched it, that is out of integrity. Standing there when someone's having a heart attack and not doing something, out of integrity. Learn to think about how integrity shows up in your life in all its myriad forms, right? I'll use this example because I know that a lot of the listeners are entrepreneurs, and because I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I've been in this world for a little bit. So I think I've had a higher exposure to these things than most. But I'll say this. Think if you are the kind of person who says, hey, I'm going to create this program for you, and this is how much it costs, and I welcome you in. And then you start pressuring people to buy something because you're going to tell them that no matter what happens, they can find a way, which, okay, that is actually a conversation that we can have about how abundance works and stuff. It's very nuanced. Please understand that this example is compressed for the sake of time, right? Our time here is limited. It's also compressed for the sake of where it's hyper-focused to this particular subject of integrity. So if you're going to be that person and it's going to say, oh, you can make it work, don't worry about it. And one of my least favorite tactics that people will use sometimes, oh, don't talk to your husband about it. Why do you need to talk to him? Don't you make your own money? Blech. Okay, that's a whole different, I'm getting on a diatribe. But if you're the kind of person that is going to sell that way and say those things and act that way and be that way, don't be the person that then reaches out to someone because you need help and you want the help for free. Are you insane? No, out of integrity. Do not do that shit. Okay. You can see that that is the one that drives me crazy. But like the thing is, it's lack of integrity is having that double standard. Don't use double standards. You cannot thrive in this life or create beautiful connection and intimacy and feel trustful of self and loving of self and understanding of self when you do that. Because again, I go back to the whole standard thing. If your standards are here, don't lower them because, okay, but this happened. And so therefore, okay, I can kind of like adjust my standard a little bit, or I'm just going to settle for less just because, I mean, no. And don't do that with double standards. Am I saying it's easy and that everyone is going to be able to master this right away and that you're never going to fail at it? Obviously not. We're all going to go through our ebbs and our flows, our ups and our downs. We're going to learn from our mistakes. We're going to grow from them. We're going to expand. We're going to go further, deeper, wider, broader. But if we really want to be deeply integrous people of deep integrity, women who have this belief that we get to lead, be leaders in this world. If you want to be a leader, you've got to get really well practiced or really well versed at the practice of integrity. And you've got to be willing to see it in many different areas of your life, not just the one, because it's not just about New Year's intentions. That's why I'm giving you so many different examples and little crevices for you to, like nooks and crannies for you to sink your teeth into so that you can see where the lack of integrity might have been, could be preventable in your life right now. Integrity. You sign a contract, be about the contract, be about the word. Don't try to find a way to obfuscate or run away from something just because now you're scared of something. Integrity. Remain firmly cemented in that integrity. I promise you it's going to make a world of difference in your life. It's going to transform everything for you. And it is absolutely pivotal to the person who wants to live a life of mindful sovereignty, and also the person who wants to create amazing things for themselves. You are that person. I believe in your power. I know how powerful you are. I see it each and every day. Your power isn't contingent on the little things, on the as long as. And the thing is, when we allow ourselves to get wrapped up on the as long as statements or the if only statements, we are out of integrity. But I know your power, and I know that you are strong enough, powerful enough, and wise enough to pay attention, to start courting this, to start dating it, to start asking these things of the self, and to start observing and to show up for yourself in your life from a place of empowered action rather than at the effect of. At the effect of is not an integrity. And I know that you are a powerful being who can and does and will continue to show up in full integrity in your life. And sometimes all it takes is a gentle reminder. Sometimes all it takes is a little reframing. Sometimes all it takes is a conversation. Uplift yourself and uplift others. That is in integrity. Tearing people asunder because you're feeling triggered, because jealousy, because inadequacy, whatever, not an integrity. Speaking life into your world, integrity. Speaking only death in terms of how awful things are, how this world is crap, how everything bad happens to you, which again is at the effect of and deeper. Not in an integrity. Integrity is understanding that self-authorship. So think about where in your life you have been out of integrity. And don't beat yourself up over it. I'm not saying this because I'm judging you and I'm telling you that you're a bad person. You know better. I don't. I just told you I love that I know like how amazing your power is. I see it and I believe in it. No, 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 no. But be willing to have these conversations and say, "Oh, you know what? I'm actually out of integrity here. And I want to not be out of integrity anymore. I want to go beyond that. I want to be in integrity. I want to be the person that leads from and with integrity. I want to be the person that wears that crown on her head and knows herself to be sovereign in all the ways. And this is one small step in one direction in which I'm going to do that. I'm going to be in integrity about this now. It really could be something as small as I'm the person who's always bailing on plans with my friends and with my family last minute. And listen, for those of us who are introverted, myself included, it can be challenging. However, right, where is that place where you can show up for yourself within that realm of empowered action? Maybe it's something as small as that and saying, okay, yeah, I know that I've been doing that. I'm going to be about my word now. Maybe, and this is an example that I use with my clients who've got parents that always makes me laugh. Maybe it's about where in your life with your children, where in your relationship with your children, have you been bending the rules? Because, man, you're just tired today and you just can't. For example, let's imagine that you go on your way to Disney World and the kids are just acting out, and you've said to them already, if you keep doing that, I'm going to turn this car around and go back. And okay, look, we all know Disney World is not cheap. We put a lot of money, time, effort, energy, yada, yada, into planning these things. Here's the thing though, integrity means that kid does the thing again, you turn the car right back around, grind your teeth about the fact that I spent this money. I am not happy with this child right now. They are not my favorite person. And they are going to know what it is like to be in integrity and to experience consequences and all of these things. You are going to lead like a leader, like a lioness in integrity. Maybe it's something as small as that. Whatever it is, wherever it is, maybe it is coming to terms with the fact that you've been saying you want to live a healthy life for a very long time, and yet you've been starving yourself. You've been cutting down calories. You've been hyper working out and doing all of the HIIT workouts because you want to fit into those jeans. And I'm not judging you. Please, like, I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that maybe it's coming to terms with the truth about that. And that truth, not to be cheesy, but will set you free, because that truth is going to be in integrity, not out of it. So where in your life have you been bending the rules just a little bit? Where in your life have you been, okay, yeah, that's my standard, but where in your life have you been not of your word? Where in your life has that integrity slipped? And what will be your invitation and your choice now that you know that that is the place where you've been out of touch with, breaking with that integrity? What is your choice as a proactive, sovereign being of your life from this moment on? How are you going to show up in your life now that you know that? And where are you going to invite more places to practice that integrity in your life? And can you celebrate what that is going to look like? Because I'm going to tell you right now that the more you do this, the more those doors will open, the more opportunities will be there, the more delectable and enjoyable and beautiful and filled with all of the things that you want in your life is going to be. It's not all about those vision boards and those manifestation journals and all of the magical things. It's not all about that. And listen, I'm the one that loves those things, but it's not all about that. It's about more. And this conversation about integrity is part of the more. So lean into that space, create the realms for yourselves where you can be about the thing, be in integrity, be that powerful woman I know that you are. Lead with integrity and play with it And then if you find out as you're doing this, you're like, I wonder if this means that this is a lack of integrity, then email me info@yoursoulfulgoddess.com. You can also reach out to me and DM me directly on Instagram @yoursoulfulgoddess. Let's have a conversation. If you're like, hey, Sapha, you said this and I don't understand it. Like, I don't know, I don't get this integrity piece. Like, am I out of integrity here? Is this I don't understand. If you want further clarification, if you want to talk about it, reach out to me. I'm so easily reachable for you. And then if you want to take it even further and you want to be in the mastery of it in a different way that is going to feel so much more embodied for your life, and you want that mentor to walk side by side with you, you know where to find me. I am here for you. My doors are open. Waitlist is open. Everything is great and we can do this together. Heck, come and spend a VIP weekend with me in Nashville and we can do the whole weekend on leadership and feminine leadership at this level, in this way, with integrity. Everything is going to drip beautiful, magnetic energetics, and it's all going to be because we're in this integrity field. We can do that. Whatever it is that you need, reach out to me and let me know. And I'm so excited to hear your thoughts and your questions about this. I will, of course, be meeting you live on Instagram soon so we can talk about this, but let's keep this conversation going because integrity is such a beautiful and important piece of all of our lives. And I hope that this was of use to you. And if you feel like someone else can hear this today and benefit from it, then share the episode. Leave a 5-star review if you haven't done it already. It helps other people find the podcast. And I thank you so much for spending this amazing day with me. I will talk to you again soon.